So, was Gene Simmons right about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense Logical Reason. And as always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So, as y'all know, most young people probably have never heard of Gene Simmons. He was part of the famous, iconic group KIZZ, rock group from the late 70s. Now, they wore these very animated costumes and they face painted, these platform shoes. That's pretty much what I remember more of KISS. I mean, I was never really a fan of the group. I mean, for the longest time, the only song that I knew of that they made was, I Want to Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day, in the last 5 years, I probably heard of the song Dr. Love and Detroit Rock City, but really, these are the only three songs that I'm familiar with of the group. So like I said, I'm just never was a fan of it, but not to diminish what they were able to accomplish. Now, Gene Simmons came out and he made the statement about hip hop being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
The fact that, for instance, Iron Maiden is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they can sell out stadiums, and Grandmaster Flash is.
Right.
Ice Cube and I had a back and forth, and he's a bright guy, and I respect what he's done. It's not my music. I don't come from the ghetto. It doesn't speak my language. And I said in print many times, hip hop does not belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, nor does opera, symphony orchestras. How come the New York Philharmonic doesn't get the Rock and Roll? Because it's called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But he shot back and said, no, it's the spirit of rock and roll. Okay, fine. So Ice Cube and Grandmaster Flash and all these guys are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I just want to know when Led Zeppelin's going to be in the Hip Hop Hall of Fame. Oh, you can't do that. Oh, really?
Now, I would say, do I agree with him? I will say slightly. I think he has a slight argument. It is considered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And if it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you can make the case that it should be designated for rock and roll artists, It'd be like, Michael Jordan is considered the greatest basketball player of all time. He is in the NBA Hall of Fame. But should he be in the NFL Hall of Fame? And of course, people will say no because he didn't play in the NFL. So he shouldn't be in the NFL Hall of Fame if he played in the NBA. So you can understand the argument that Gene Simmons made here, but there's a slight problem with his argument. The problem is that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has long since been, and I would say at its inception, has been designated as a place for all musical artists to go, right? If you look at the first class that was inducted, was basically in 1986. Now, some of the people on those lists was Ray Charles, Fats Domino's, James Brown, and Sam Cooke. Now, I would say Ray Charles in Fats Domino and Sam Cooke, if you listen to their music, it's definitely, you can say they're rock and roll. But James Brown, I've never considered James Brown a rock and roll artist. He was an R&B artist. So from its inception, you have an R&B artist, which means that it's, again, from its inception, it's been a place for basically a non-rock and roll artist. I'm sorry, I don't consider James Brown rock and roll, even though people do. There's nothing right. He's an R&B artist. So you got, from its inception, you have someone who's really a non-rock and roll artist, in my book, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So it's, again, at its inception, that rule doesn't make any sense. Now, the official building actually opened in 1985, like 9 years later. But again, that's my argument, is that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has been, again, it's been labeled as a place for all musical forms to go. So the ship has really sailed on that argument. So, I mean, I can, like I said, I understand what he's saying, that if it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it should be for rock and roll artists. But right now, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is for all genres of music. Now, again, for those people who are going to cry racism because he talked about hip hop, he also said opera. He also said opera artists shouldn't be in there. I just, at this point, to me, it's like you got to fight your battles. You got to pick and choose your battle. And this right here is not a battle that, again, this is just me, my opinion, but this is not a battle that's worth fighting. Now, if you want to say that they should change it from the hip hop, from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to just the Music Hall of Fame, you can make that argument at this point. But to say that hip hop should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame right now, I just think that the ship is long since sailed on this, and this is a battle that's really not worth fighting. But who knows? That's my 2 cents. So to answer the question, I slightly agree with Gene Simmons on this, but for the most part, I disagree because as I said, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has been designated for all genres of music at this point, and really truly, ain't no sense in going back now. So Gene Simmons was wrong here, but again, that's my opinion. And I'm not looking at this from a standpoint of race. I'm making race out of it and being in my feelings over quote unquote racism. It's just basic common sense. At this point, this argument it's just like I said, the ship has sailed on this, and it just is a stupid argument and a pointless argument to make that's not just gonna be useless for no reason. Anyway, y'all, that's my 2 cents on this. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has been designated as a place for all genres of music. As I said, if you want to change it to the Music Hall of Fame, go ahead, but this is a pointless argument. And it's always, always, until next time.